All right. We are getting connected. Sweet. Starting late. Sorry about that. I was fighting with Restream on. I was trying to get the title connected for what's it called? For Twitch, and it wasn't going through, and I was freaking out. I was like, "Why is this not working?" And the title today actually doesn't. I figured out at the last minute, like literally a minute before 6 o'clock, and I wasn't ready at all because I was so busy with that the title goes against Twitch's guidelines, and so that was I spent like almost half an hour, wasted almost half an hour on that. We couldn't figure it out. So apologize for starting a little bit late today. Definitely some, I think, relevant and topical things to talk about. And we're going to be talking about white supremacy today, the rise of it, kind of the cause, or not even the cause, really. I don't want to get into the cause, but I do want to get into like the fuel of it. So not the engine, but the gasoline. But like I said, it is relevant. It is topical, and I want to connect a few dots first and foremost. But then I want to get into my personal story surrounding it, and I think that's really important, to talk about. Like I said, yeah, my personal story, and I never totally fell into it, but I kind of how I sort of started on the path, and then how I escaped, or how I got out, almost in a way. Um, Let me. Oh, that's not what I want. So yeah, so we'll get into my story in a little bit. But first and foremost, let's address kind of the like what's relevant, why this is a topic that we're talking about. And Andrew Yang recently on an interview. Oh, I don't have the audio set up. Okay, I'll have to turn on the captions. So that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna watch this little clip from Andrew Yang in a recent interview, and then we'll get into the rest of this. We'll talk some more about why that's relevant, my stance, and this isn't about Andrew Yang, but this is just about like why this has come up. So I'm just gonna go ahead and play the clip. Sorry, the audio is gonna be kind of messed up, but we'll have I'll have the captions on. Here, let's do nice theater mode. Make it a little bit bigger. So I'm just gonna go ahead and play this clip. It's probably gonna be about a minute, and then I'll say some things on it.
First, let me say I want everyone as part of the coalition. If you can vote, we can disagree on a lot of things. It's all to the good. If we agree on the fact that this duopoly is not working, it's designed to turn us against each other and sink us. So that's one of the principles of the Forward Party, is that, look, I can disagree with
Forward Party
stuff, but if we can make common cause on this, then we can go back to disagreeing when the democracy is actually set up to succeed. When
So let me ask you. So even, to make it really specific, if people on the right say the Republican Party is too centrist, I'm an extreme white supremacist or something like that, but I think we need to we need single transferable vote or whatever in campaign. You still welcome that because you're on the same page on that one issue.
Yeah, if they're going to help us transition to a more effective democracy, I don't need to know what their stance is on things that I disagree with. People have a sense of where I'm coming from.
Okay.
But right now, I believe that there is an existential threat to the country else under the sun, in a time when the democracy actually will stand the test of time. When we transition to a multi-party system where you can't make any autocratic or authoritarian decisions, you have to somehow get 2 or 3 other parties on board.
Okay, all right, fair. So on the question of is everyone literally welcome, the answer is yes. That's fine. That's legitimate. So that's clear. Now, in terms of to whom.
Okay, cool. Let's talk about that a little bit. So let's break down what just happened. So I don't have my captions on. Like I said, I didn't have time to really get set up properly today. Apologize for that. So what Andrew Yang was saying. So Andrew Yang's big thing right now with the Forward Party is about fixing like the actual democratic mechanics that we have. And I have spoken out publicly about where I am on that. That he is that like he's on the right path, but his solution is wrong. So ranked choice voting, single transferable vote, those are not voting methods that will help. So our current choose one voting exasperates polarity through vote splitting, and ranked choice voting has the same vote splitting problems. We've been in contact with him and his team, with the Forward Party, about the mechanics about democratic mechanics, to try to get them to shift their stance. And there's a lot happening in that space. Of course, now I am a director on the board director for the Equal Vote Coalition. So this is relevant. Of course, the Forward Party actually had a logo that was very similar to the logo of the Equal Vote Coalition, and they have since changed it. And so we've been talking to them. They've taken, we can get into that. But before I get into the actual like how voting methods interact with extremist ideology. Hey, nice to have you, TC. Sorry, yeah, I started late. I had some technical difficulties, but I do want to explicitly state that the Equal Vote Coalition does have a code of conduct. This actually is not a draft anymore, and I'm just going to edit that right now, because I am a board member, so I can do that. I'm just going to suggest that we delete that, so somebody will come along and, oops, don't share it. I don't want to share that. Back to viewing. It's no longer a draft. This has been approved by the board, so we just need to remove that word. But there are two points in here that I want to highlight. So number 2 on diversity. Electoral reform, research, and theory are traditionally fields which have historically been almost entirely dominated by white males. We strive to break these patterns and to help support new people to become involved in this field. Please make a point of being welcoming and inviting, and taking the time to ensure that people are able to ask questions, get up to speed, and contribute their thoughts and ideas. We strive to cultivate a space where people with diverse ideas, lived experience, and politics can all be included. Equal Vote, the Equal Vote Coalition, and the Star Voting Project, Star Voting Action, are explicitly nonpartisan, and ensuring people with diverse views are represented is important. For that reason, please try to avoid negative comments about political parties or specific candidates. Keep discussion of candidates or current events to a minimum, and keep it relevant to voting theory and reform efforts. Avoid sweeping generalizations or assumptions. So that's our point number 2. And then point number 6, I also want to highlight number 6, hate speech and discrimination. Abusive, threatening, mocking, or condescending actions, speech, or written statements, especially those that express prejudice against a particular group on the basis of race, religion, ability, identity, sexual orientation, age, class, or political affiliation, will not be tolerated. Please be respectful and mindful of people's names and pronouns. If you are unclear how to refer to somebody, ask them politely. So this is a publicly available document. This applies to volunteers and all of our interactions within, among, and around and about the Equal Vote Coalition. So I want to make that explicitly clear. Oh, am I not showing my screen right now? I'm not showing my screen right now. Sorry. Let me switch back to the screen. So yeah. So number 2. So this is, I just literally just read it. So number 2 on diversity, electoral reform, all the way down here, all the way down, Equal Vote, the Star Voting Project are explicitly nonpartisan. Avoid negative comments about political parties or specific candidates, and then Number 6, hate speech or discrimination, abusive, threatening, mocking, or condescending action, speech, or written statements, especially those that express prejudice against a particular group on the basis of all of these different buzzwords, will not be tolerated. Please be respectful of people's names and pronouns. So yeah, so this is just like a thing I want to highlight before I get into what I talk about. What I'm about to talk about is not coming from me as a, well, no, I will say something from the perspective of a board member of the Equal Vote Coalition, but then after that I'm going to transition into something more personal, and that will not be reflective of me as a board member of the Equal Vote Coalition. So the Equal Vote Coalition, we strive for equality in the vote. We strive to end vote splitting. Let me switch this back to me. We strive to end vote splitting, and vote splitting that we see under choose one voting, that we see under ranked choice instant runoff voting, causes polarity, amplifies the voices of more extreme positions, and that includes things like supremacist stances, supremacist ideology, but it's in extreme in all directions. It's not necessarily exclusively left and right. It's just away from the center of public opinion. And so I advocate for voting methods that build consensus. So those are like star voting, approval voting, ranked robin, which is kind of a new kid on the block. Forward Party seems to like it. It's both new and old. But so voting method reform can help us to address extremism in a sort of indirect way, in kind of what it amplifies. So all voting methods are either have either a center expansion effect, a center squeeze effect, or a kind of a balance of the two. And so consensus building voting methods like star voting can help us to fight extremism when we're coming from a voting method with vote splitting, which is what we're currently dealing with. But okay, so to get off of that and into, I want to get into my personal story now. So now I want to get into the part where I talk about where I'm coming from when it comes to, like I said in the title, how I avoided, falling into supremacist ideology. I want to be very clear that I actually didn't avoid anything. That's not what happened. What happened was I got pulled out. And so this may be a little bit of a shock to maybe some people who I don't seem like that kind of person who was ever there. And for somebody who does not explicitly talk about this kind of stuff very often, I often don't like these labels. I don't like putting labels on others. I don't like talking about ideologies because I think a lot of it is very bunk and everybody has different ideas of what these terms mean. And so I'm not going to be like very well defining white supremacy, but it is just so relevant because I have explicitly stated many times before that all people are welcome in my campaign. Of course, I'm not campaigning right now, but I have said that, and I've meant it, and I still mean it, that I work on solutions that include all people. But let's talk about my personal story. So I was born in 1995. So I was going into 9th grade in 2009. So at that point in time, Facebook had already started to get pretty big. I kind of avoided it for a little while. It really started to blow up maybe around 2007 or so, maybe 2008, when Barack Obama was getting big. So I remember there was a lot of hype around how many friends he had on Facebook and how many friends he had on MySpace. So that was when those two were kind of interconnected. But so this was during a time when we didn't really understand the impact of social media and how it affected us, and like what it led to, and kind of the macro societal effects. So I was 14 at the time when I got on Facebook. I was going into 9th grade, I believe, around that time. And kind of what happened, a couple things happened. So, I was bullied at the time. I didn't have a ton of like close friends necessarily, especially getting into high school. I have Tourette Syndrome, which many people don't know, and I have much more control over it now than I did at the time. It was much more noticeable at the time, but also people also didn't really understand Tourette Syndrome back then. A lot of people still don't really understand it today. It's quite often not just like blurting out swear words. It's not really what Tourette Syndrome is in most cases. Um, but you know, I certainly experienced ostracization. For sure, that first year or two, I couldn't really find anybody to sit with at lunch, my particular lunch period, and so that was like not fun. Um, but but I think the social media is a part of it. So I got like addicted to Facebook, and you know, the algorithms existed back then too. We talk about the algorithms all the time now, but we didn't really understand them back then as a whole. I mean, not to say that we really understand them now, but we understand them a lot more, or at least what the effects of them are. And I definitely got into, you know, started getting into, it reinforced misogynist, like misogynist attitudes in me, right? That like stemmed from, you know, just kind of cultural misogyny that we all grown up around. But it reinforced it, and I believed it more and more, believed more in meritocracy, and you know, that certain people were better than others, and you know, and in some, you know, pretty like not so great things. Like I believed some things that weren't true, and I continued down that path, and that was getting reinforced more and more. But I was, I guess, very fortunate or very lucky that I just happened to have like a couple of friends a couple people who I friended on Facebook who were also like pretty active, but they had been posting like content that kind of kind of directly contradicted some of those ideas that I had, some of those things that I thought. And you know, it was one of the things like after seeing it enough, it started to make me think differently about some of the things I had previously thought. And I think also like I grew up in a like a pretty warm, welcoming home for the most part. You know, at that particular point in time, I think I was in a fairly positive situation at home. You know, and then I joined marching band and some other extracurricular activities, and I felt more welcomed into those communities, and I experienced more diversity, and I think that kind of had a reversing effect, and I think that overall that kind of led me away from that path. But I will say that I think, like I didn't see it at the time, but upon reflection, I absolutely see how the path that I was on led to a path of supremacy, or supremacist ideology, I should say. Like I can see how that could have led me to white supremacy eventually, and I just kind of got lucky that it didn't. And again, I want to say, like, I think the big thing is just that, like, if I had continued to be ostracized, and I didn't get help, and I didn't get, you know, I was doing therapy, and it's like, you know, we found a really great therapist and psychiatrist who diagnosed me with Tourette's, and that was the other thing too. I didn't even know I had Tourette's until I was 14 years old, after I joined Facebook, as well as obsessive compulsive disorder. You know, and I was starting on medications, and all these different things were happening. If I didn't have that kind of support, I don't think I'd be the person I am today. And it was no one thing. It was no one person. It was just being around people in a community that supported me and included me, and you know, and and despite the fact that I was an asshole, which I was, there's no two ways about it. I used to be an asshole. They put up with me, and you know, that was, I think, ultimately helpful. And and that is like the message that I want to deliver. Is that, like, if you've been following me for the last however many months, or even a full year, probably not, but yeah, however many months, and you have felt very empowered by the things I've been saying, and the messages I've been delivering, and you think I've had good takes, you know, I want you to take it very seriously when I say that the primary fuel for white supremacy is ostracization. And so this is really important. I don't think that is the engine that drives it, but I think that I don't even want to say that I think. If you talk to anybody who used to identify as a white supremacist, or anybody who's actually like actively converting people from it, they will all tell you the same thing. They'll tell you exactly what I'm telling you, that it's ostracization, that it's writing people off, that it's saying, no, you're not included, no, I'm butting you out, you don't count, we don't include racists, right, labeling them whatever. You know, that is not helpful. That actually makes it worse, because it is, you're not born a white supremacist. It happens over time. It is a thing that happens gradually, and you know, if somebody's ostracized from their community or from society, and somebody comes along, no matter who they are, it doesn't matter where they are or where they're from or whatever, and then they welcome them and they say, hey, you are welcome, we understand you, we think, you know, what you're saying makes sense, we get your anger, that's going to be very attractive, and you're going to see people drawn to that, and that is sort of kind of the engine of white supremacy. Is they find people, particularly young white men, who have been ostracized and feel like they're being called out, feel like society is ostracizing them, and they draw them in by leveraging that, and then, you know, it just gets reinforced, because you know, once you get into that kind of ideology, then people ostracize you even more. That's what we do, and we get, I don't want to say tribal. I have a friend who doesn't like the word tribal because it really, we do use it incorrectly, we absolutely do. But groupthink, you know, for sure, like getting into our own corners and then like building a totem of like the other group to like yell at, right? That's the thing we love doing. You know, we this is it, it's self-reinforcing. And it's like, this is the thing, is like, I know that it's like, so what am I actually saying? Am I saying that we should just include white supremacists in everything that we do? Actually, no, I don't think that. Let me take another drink here. But what I am saying is that, like, we do need to have we need to take like a proper look at this and say, like, how do we actually reduce this? How do we prevent this? How do we address this? And the answer is not to write people off, because people can change, people have changed, people do change, people talk about the change they've gone through in their lives all the time, including people coming from extremist points of view, including white supremacy. And so we need to how do we actually execute on this? Because there's this counterpoint, a valid counterpoint of like, well, welcoming white supremacists into a certain space can be harmful to minorities. Like it's like you can't. They say you can't coexist, and I get that, like, violence is like a thing or whatever. And there's certainly like one piece of it which is like you need to separate people's actions from the people themselves, or you need to separate actions from identity, right? That was one of the things when I was reading over the code of conduct earlier, that like you can include people without allowing all actions. And so you can prohibit or you can ban actions, and then if people exhibit certain harmful actions, then you can ban that person. But discriminating against somebody based off their identity is in the first place is not okay. And that particular kind of marginalization is especially harmful when it comes to white supremacy, because the more white supremacy there is, the more damage that is done overall to everybody. So how do we actually do this? How do we execute on this? I think really the answer is like you need is to have an explicit separation of safe spaces and open spaces, because those two are sometimes conflicting, right? So like inclusivity and safety do not always work together. Sometimes they're mutually exclusive. They absolutely are, and like I don't deny that, and that those support groups are actually even more important when we start talking about things like white supremacy. So, for example, if you are part of a minority group, saying, right, so for example, I'm queer, and I get that, like, it is really hard to talk to somebody who thinks that like queer people should die, or somebody who has a queer child that they then kicked out onto the street, or somebody who put their queer child through conversion therapy. Like that's a really, really hard person to talk to. But like that is the hard work, though. That is the part that is really difficult. That is the hard work that needs to be done to address these issues. That is like the reason that we haven't made the progress, the reason that we haven't been getting anything done, is because people don't want to do the hard work. And that is the hard work. Not organizing, not fundraising, not running for office, not all the advocacy, not social media, not all that stuff. That's not the hard work. The hard work is the one-on-one conversations. The hard work is the forming genuine human connection with people you disagree with. And by the way, it is the one-on-one that's the most important. I mean, even having 3 people in a conversation can really ruin things. You really do need to have the one-on-ones. That is so vital. And it's the listening, it's the not reacting. And this is something that I wanted to demonstrate on my stream. I still want to do this. I talk about this all the time, and I haven't been able to make it happen. I want to have on the people who disagree with me. I want to have people who say the craziest things, and I want to engage with them, and I want to have one-on-one conversations with them. I want to demonstrate how to actually have these conversations rather than talking about how to have these conversations. But then what happens is like, okay, after you have that conversation, which may have been incredibly difficult, that's when you have this safe space that is only inclusive to people of a certain identity and is exclusive of people not of that certain identity, to go back to as a support group. For like, oh my gosh, you just had this conversation, it was so hard, right? Like listening to this person say all these things I didn't want to hear, and like to have a space to vent and people to listen to you and to support you and to support others who go through that too, and to find other ways of dealing with it. Like I've had many conversations with people I disagree with that are incredibly frustrating to me, but I keep that under wraps during the conversation, and I'm able to make progress in that conversation with that person, and then I turn around and go home and scream at the mirror for 2 hours. And like, that's how I cope. right? And like you do whatever it is that you need to do, whatever works better for you. If it's going on a walk, exercising, playing video games. I don't want to say stress eating, but you can have a little bit of ice cream or whatever it is, watching a movie, like whatever works for you. Right, you need to find your ways to cope. And I also get that like not everybody is in a position or like prepared to do this kind of work, and I understand that, but we need a lot more people doing it, and we need a lot more people who do have the ability to step up and say, I'm going to do the hard work. Again, I want to demonstrate exactly what that looks like. So I want to get people on here and talk and have those conversations and just show it. This is really important. What was the other thing there was another thing I wanted to say that was related to this in the middle of it all. But yeah, having that kind of support, that support group that is explicitly separate. So safe space is explicitly separate from open spaces. I think that is important. I think it is important to have both and be part of both, and to lean on others to help you get through that stuff. But the thing is, again, this is the ultimate point. This is what it comes down to. If you want to reduce the spread of white supremacy, then you as an individual have the power. You have choices that you get to make throughout your day. Are you going to continue ostracizing people, or are you going to avoid ostracizing people? And it was so interesting because I've seen some other people kind of take this stance on Twitter, and I've been a little bit quiet about it because 280 characters, it's just very hard to convey this stuff. But a lot of the people who were saying what I was saying, who were saying this same kind of stuff, were also white males, and people would point that out, and they'd be like, "Look, the only people who are saying we gotta like tolerate white supremacy are white males or whatever." It's like, no, that's not what it is. It's like it's about like backing up, zooming out, and looking at the overall goal, but also like. I think an important piece of this is like understanding like, yeah, those are the people who understand it, because those people like myself who almost went down that path, we see it, we feel it, we know why people why people end up as white supremacists. Just because I'm not one myself doesn't mean I don't understand. Actually, I would say that because I'm a young white male who has not ended up becoming a white supremacist, like I think that does give me unique perspective on, and I think that does give me unique perspective on like how it happens, and I think that there is a certain degree of like it is important. It is important to like hear that out and to be like, no, look, when we tell you that we understand why our demographic is going down this route, and that it isn't, and we agree with you that it is important to prevent that from happening, like it's important that you listen to that. Like we're not coming at you and saying that like, oh, we're discriminated against, or like, oh, our lives are so hard. That's not what it's about. Like it's not about. We're not arguing like an oppression angle. That's not where we're coming from. We're saying like we have a firsthand experience of what they're going through and why they've gone down the road that they have, and we want to help make sure, just like we haven't gone down that path, we want to make sure others like us don't go down that path, and that requires this approach that's different. And so like this is the real thing that I just want to get to. And look, as an individual, it's your choice. And I don't want to try to like, I'm not trying to like gaslight people or whatever, but like that's not what this is. It's like really ultimately when you decide to ostracize people, then you are contributing to white supremacy. You are. You just are. And it is something that you need to stay conscious of throughout your interactions with people, whether in person or on social media. And to say things like, it's just too much. You know, there's some people you just can't break through to. Like, you haven't tried hard enough. You really haven't. Because you haven't been tolerant of it in the first place. Like, I don't want to say you haven't been tolerant of it in the first place. That's not the right way to phrase that. This is a really hard issue to dance around and to explain properly. But it's if you're struggling with it, it's not because it's impossible. It's because you're approaching it wrong. And again, like, how do you approach it correctly? Like, that cannot be summed up in a single sentence. That like I linked a couple TED Talks in a tweet the other day related to this. But like, I want to demonstrate this. I want to actually show it. I want to have these conversations on camera and on live streams. I think that's really important because, again, like, this is hard. Like, this is really hard. This is hard to do for sure. And I think that seeing it actually happen is going to be vital to actually doing it. Again, I don't, today I'm doing the same thing I accuse everybody else of doing, of like talking about doing it, but not actually doing it. Like, I want to actually do it. I have done it before, but I want to demonstrate it. I want to do it on camera, and that's tough. But like, again, that's why when I say solutions that include all people, I mean it. You know, that's why my angle is like, look, our goals are aligned. I want to reduce white supremacy, but the way to do it is not to scream at them and call them white supremacists. The way to do it is not to scream at them and call them racists or Republicans or whatever. The way to do it is to have those one-on-one conversations and to listen and listen and listen and listen intently, and directly address the specific things, while, like, specific little things, not trying to address everything. You pick one thing at a time, and then you do that at the same time as forming a genuine human connection with that person, and that's tough. It's real tough when you're talking to somebody who believes that maybe you shouldn't exist, and it's not that I'm asking minorities to make space for the feelings of, like, white landowning men. It's just saying that, like, if you have this specific goal, and if you want to address white supremacy, then you need to actually do what works. And like, this has been a thing for long enough. We have enough. Like, we actually have data on this. And like, there have been studies about how to actually achieve this. Like, we know what works and we know what doesn't. So all I'm asking you is that if you have a goal, do what works. So TC did say, and I didn't really understand, only one has been there, oh, I see. He's saying only one who has been there can speak to the issue. I don't want to say only one who has been there can speak to the issue necessarily. Maybe, potentially, yeah. I mean, I haven't been all the way there, but I've been on that path before, and so that's why I think I get it. So I'm gonna try to pull up Twitter. It may screw up my frame rate or take me off camera or do something weird. Like I said, I wanted to be more prepared for this stream, but I ran into some technical issues here. So let's, come on. Come on. All right. Twitter. Let's see if we got any comments on Twitter, because they don't come through on my thing yet, which is still dumb. Okay, let's look here. It doesn't look like anybody has commented. So, oh, looks like Twitter is still screwing up the streaming codec. That's why. Ugh, that's so annoying. Okay, well, I've been rambling for about 40 minutes now, so I'm gonna stop unless somebody else has something they want to say or questions. Um, but hopefully I can condense this down and have a couple clips I can share or something. But yeah, this is really, I think this is like a specific issue that needs to be talked about specifically. It can't be talked about generically, particularly right now. So yeah, thanks for hearing me out. But I wanna answer more questions about this. So please tweet at me publicly or privately. Say something to me because I think this is really, really important.